selling and step into pricing and products and services. So, okay, this sheet right here, I've kind of got some worksheet style space on it because I want us to start thinking about how we're, what we're selling and how we're selling it. So, I'll take Cosetta, can I use it as an example? Okay. You can say no if you want to use somebody else. Okay, so let's take Cosetta. Her artwork's hanging all around us. So if we were going to price out your work and the value of your work, at the top here where it says product or service, we would say paintings, because that's specific and that's what it is. If we had paintings, we had maybe even commissions. So these are like canvas paintings, but if you had commissions as a product or service, then you want to list that separately. So just canvas paintings in this first section. And then we want to list out all of the different variants. So obviously this will be different for everyone. And I encourage you guys to like fill it out according to what you're wanting to sell. So your variants would be, you know, the size of each of these canvases. You probably have some standard sizes that you use. And then you want to ask yourself, okay, when I'm painting, how much time am I spending on like administrative tasks? So you don't think, okay, if it's not a commission, if it's a painting like this beautiful woman right here, and you're like, okay, what ad time did you spend on that? When you went to the store to get supplies, even when you came to hang it up in a gallery space, like thinking kind of about if you had an assistant, what they would be spending their time doing, because I want you to start thinking about your time in segments like that. Every entrepreneur has to do it. You're doing like 15 jobs. It is what it is, but you should still account for the time you're spending so that you know what your budget is when you're ready to outsource. So that admin time on this painting itself could just be like 30 minutes. That's fine. Production time is the time that you're spending actually creating the product. So let's say if for a smaller piece, maybe you know yourself well enough to know it's going to take you a couple of hours. For a logo, you might know yourself well enough to know it's probably going to take you 6 hours for the first draft, and then you want to save some time to do 2 hours of revisions. Always be thinking about, if you're doing some type of work that requires feedback from clients, how much time you need to be budgeting for revisions. And then I would encourage you to add those together and obviously multiply them by whatever hourly rate you want to be making. So a lot of times I'll put artists on the spot and make them go backwards.
I've got to change on.
So yeah, because if we were to put the total price at the back end of this sheet, then we would work backwards and see that you're probably making like $5 an hour if you're not charging enough, right?
Just use the force, I swear. I'm just like, guess how much that was.
You're not alone.
Yeah,
so many.
Yes.
Yes.
The force.
So many artists, but even entrepreneurs will just do that. Even like without, I mean, they're like, oh, about this much. And I'm like, that stresses
And
me
there
out.
are industries that are value-based. Don't get me wrong. It might be that right now it costs you $100 to paint something. If you're, maybe you want to get paid $25 an hour, it takes you 4 hours. And then, really probably cost you $150 with all your admin and your materials, whatever. But later, when you have built a huge reputation, when you've got a huge client base, when you've got a lot of demand, that's when the value-based pricing starts coming in. What we're talking about right now is really cost-based pricing. It's like, okay, bare minimum, like what do you need to be charging to actually feed yourself?
Well, and make sure you're not making $5 an hour.
Make sure you're not making $5 an hour.
Yeah.
So we didn't talk about materials yet, but obviously that's this line where you'll add, your materials cost, and then your total, is the bare minimum that you should be charging for your art. So I won't put you on the spot and ask you how much time you spent on this lady, but if I were guessing, if I had to paint that, it would probably take me like, I don't know, about 6 hours. I feel like I would spend 6 hours, like 6 to 8 hours. That feel right?
I actually went back and redeemed her too.
Oh, okay. So we did have some revision time on that
Yeah,
one.
she looked a different way.
Okay.
And I went, no, I wanted to switch her up.
Okay.
And I did,
So how many hours did we spend on that?
Maybe about 6.
Okay, total with the revisions?
Like 3 on the first time.
3 on the first time.
Because, yeah, I
We
had
did
to
some,
get rid of.
And every
some
creative in
stuff,
here
and
can tell
then-
you, it's time is hard
Yeah.
because you could spend like 50 hours on one piece. I
Mhm.
mean, there is no limit to the time that you could spend on something.
That one, the first one was probably the hardest for me
Mm-hmm.
because I was having issues with the, how you say, gesso, the primer.
Yes.
I was
yes.
having issues there. And so I was trying to get it off of it. And it was just
Yes.
catastrophe after catastrophe. I spent a lot of time on that. But the one in the middle came so fast.
Yeah.
You know, there's some
Yeah.
that just come up and out.
And I think that's a good point because that some take longer than others. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the same thing with any type of creative work. Sometimes it's just flows right out of you and it takes only an hour. And but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily what you should be charging for that work.
I
You
think
know,
that's where artists, it's a combination of a product and a service-based business. And you don't see that in a lot of industries where you're like providing a product, but you're also providing a service, which is like your creative, artistic abilities.
and where the
so-
time is variable.
Yes. So
You
you've
know?
got, it's very hard because it's like, and that service you're providing
Right.
is not guaranteed to take you. It's not an
No.
oil change. It's
No,
not
it's
like,
not.
it's not like 30 minutes or less every time, like it's not like the same thing. So it's like, you've got like a service that's like fluctuating and a product that, and then you add on top of that product, like, inflation costs that are kind of crazy right now. So it's like, that's fluctuating. So
I would say, if anything, you want to be budgeting on the high end of how long you think something's going to take you to do with revision time. Okay, so then if you flip your sheet over, I have a few like signs that it's time to raise your pricing. This is if you have a wait list, if you're overbooked, if your costs have increased. So all of these, so when people tell me, we build websites at Silverlake all the time and people will come to us. It's so weird when they're like, we need a website. And we're like, okay, so what's your goal with the website? Do you want more leads? Do you want more, connections? They're like, no, we're way too busy. And like, we can't take any more work, right? So, of course, I'm like talking them into why they're going to need these contacts later when they're not so busy. But then I'm also usually visiting the topic of price, because if everybody's like, yes, then you probably need to raise your prices a little bit. And I understand like starting low because everybody needs to build their portfolio, especially in the creative fields. But just notice when you're overbooked, when you have a wait list, when you're like, oh my gosh, I have 3 commissions right now and I'm behind on 2 out of 3, that's a sign that you need to raise your pricing. If you've made upgrades, so this even includes if you've been featured in, in some sort of press, if you've made upgrades to the, your software, like there are so many upgrades that are sort of like, they're not necessarily tangible all the time, but I mean, if you have bigger clients that you're working with, some of those things are upgrades that you can consider when you're thinking about your pricing. And then if your price is just the lowest on the market, then honestly, to me, in the creative fields, you're kind of like undercutting everyone, and it's not a good place to be. Really, like as creatives, we have to grow together, and that means keeping our pricing, competitive. Just like if someone comes along and tells, my clients at Silverlake that they're going to build them a $50 logo, I'm like, man, but why? You should be charging more for your time, first of all. And like, it makes the whole industry feel unbalanced and unvalued when somebody's pricing their work too low. And then if you don't have enough profit to invest in your growth, period, like you have to be able to put money back in to invest in growth, even if that means, hiring somebody to help you with your administrative tasks, things like that. And then I just want to talk about how to level up commission projects, because I think, in design, like all you're doing is commission projects. Like it's made to order, unless you're putting stuff on like templates on Etsy or something. But But with most of us as artists, we want to do commissions. We just don't maybe have like the infrastructure in place, like the process is not nailed down. Or maybe some problems would be that you feel like you don't necessarily have people asking you for commissions, or too many people are asking you for commissions. So just a few things that'll help you with your process. Again, I'm seeing this as like, okay, this is a business. And with your commissions, I think that one of the most important things that artists are missing is this project management piece and the onboarding of a client. So when we're talking about like what types of commissions you want to be receiving, I know some artists who are receiving, I mean, too many commissions that do not fit with their art style. So, I mean, it's like if somebody came to you and asked you for a painting of their dog, like some artists will say yes to things that don't fit their style, and that is a recipe for unhappiness on both ends. You know, the person who's never seen your dog painting and gets one and is surprised at what they received is, you know, going to feel like they didn't know what they were signing up for, and then you are going to feel frustrated when you're painting something that you don't love to paint. So to me, the best way to remedy this is to have an online portfolio that's really defined. If you don't want to be painting dogs, say no to dogs and don't put them in your online portfolio. If all you want to be painting are landscapes, then say no to people and only put landscapes in your portfolio. Scarlett has a question.
Yes. Does this translate to freelance writing? Because I know when I was starting out, we wrote whatever you could possibly
Sure.
get.
Yeah. Here's my thing about that. Any creative outlet, if you make your portfolio niche and put out the things that you want to be hired for, I promise you're going to get asked about everything else in between. Like we talk about designing logos and websites. Do people call us to design brochures? Girl, every day. Like it's just a part of it when they know that you're a writer, they know you're a graphic designer. But you get to control the narrative on your portfolio, and that I think helps you grow in the direction that you want to grow. You're really not. It's a false myth that it's a myth that you're gonna lose out on freelance work if you don't have that in your portfolio, because I think that they call you for all the things in between. So if you wanted to be writing blogs, you want to be writing, let's say articles, opinion pieces, and somebody called you to write copy on their website. I mean, if you're just in the spot where you need to take that work, I would say, take it, but that doesn't mean you have to put it on your portfolio,
Paint the dog.
Yeah.
Tell people.
Yes. If you have to paint the dog, but you don't have to put it in your portfolio. You don't have to shout it from the rooftop so you painted dogs, because when you do, everybody else will be calling you to paint their dog. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you've become known as the dog painter,
and you didn't build a business you love.
Accidentally built a business you hate. Yeah, it happens all the time. I know people in marketing that have 20 social media clients and they hate doing social media, but they said yes one time, talked about it online, word of mouth kept happening, and then bam, they built a social media.
They probably underpriced themselves.
Anyway, okay, so moving on to number 2 of leveling up your commission projects. In number 1, I didn't mention the clearly defined onboarding. I think it's another missed opportunity for artists, because if people are hiring you to do something creative, it means that they probably have no idea how to do it themselves or even how it works. So, to use your writing example, Scarlett, like if I called somebody to write a blog for me, I would want you to tell me, okay, here's how it works. I'm going to interview you for 20 minutes. I'll send you a first draft within a week. And then you have one revision round, and your final, draft will be delivered within 3 to 4 weeks. That makes me feel so safe when I'm hiring somebody to do something that I don't understand. I always compare creative work to construction work or remodeling. You know what I mean? Like if I hired somebody to maybe remodel my kitchen and they were like, don't worry, we'll be done in 2 to 3 months. And that's all they told me. I would be like, okay, but do I get to even see the the tiles? Do I get to like pick out my hardware? Like, what is the process here? Like, whenever as a creative, you're just like, just trust me. That's scary. That's not making your commissions clients feel safe. Like, give them an idea of what to expect and when to expect it.
I love that one revision round thing too, like
Oh,
setting
yeah.
expectations on the front end. You got one shot, girlfriend. You're gonna get one round of revisions, and then we're moving on, because then you can build that into pricing.
Totally.
You can't build 3 rounds.
Scarlett
of
has
revisions.
another question. I love this. Yes,
Does
ma'am.
this translate going back then to visual arts? Because I know sometimes if you give someone like, here's my start out sketch for the process, like that visual, they're suddenly like, oh no, that's not even what I wanted, even though that's the preliminary layout.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've known, Jessica Jones is one of my good friends, and I know that with her, first of all, when we first met, she was still doing spec work for people who wanted a mural but didn't know what they wanted. And it's been probably 5 years since then, and she's now charging for concepts, which is something I recommend to every artist. I don't even care if it's $50 that you're charging for your sketch concepts. Charge something for your time. But first of all, that skin in the game on the concept is important, because if people really are interested in the commission, but they're not willing to pay for a concept, then you could sink so much time into trying things, that they don't like. Another way to mitigate that is just some sort of questionnaire or interview on the front end to make sure you really understand what they want. But I mean, even with Jess, I think she probably does 1 to 2 revision rounds on the actual concept. So like when she's drawing it out on her iPad before she ever goes to paint, they get to look at that and give her, I feel like it's probably 1 to 2 revision rounds, maybe even just guaranteed 2. But then once it hits the wall, I mean, that's when you want the revisions early in that stage, because once it hits the wall, I mean, like this mural that you guys saw on the way in, if she got that up and I had revisions to it, my goodness.
That just is what it is. Like,
yeah.
It's just on the wall.
Now, I think she does allow for a little bit of touch-up time afterwards, if, maybe a color didn't turn out the way you thought it was going to, or something like that. But that stuff I feel like you learn as you go. But that clearly defined like process and onboarding is so important for commission work. And then sending estimates. So this is another thing. I feel like a lot of collaboration with artists gets just sort of like lost in the shuffle, because artists don't respond quickly. And so we have a rule at Silverlake that we send out estimates within 48 hours. And that sets us apart in the industry, because we're, the industry's full of creatives, and we all are like, well, it depends, do you want this or do you want this? But if you have a like clearly defined pricing system, then you have absolutely no reason you can't send out an estimate within 48 hours.
And that's a competitive advantage for you guys.
Amen. Yes. And for every artist who, I remember like there's an artist I love out of Little Rock, and I asked her to do a commission piece for my mom's wall. And she was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Like, okay.
Same.
Yeah, that's when I needed her to say, what's the size? What's the timeline? Ask me some questions, so that she could turn around and give me a price. Because
here's our process for doing that.
If you're hearing from somebody that's interested in working with you, I promise you, they've already done some research on you. Whether it's asking a friend, stalking you online, they're ready for a price. Don't be afraid to start quoting your pricing and talking about your timeline. They're ready for that. And then I always think it's a benefit for artists to send their invoices online. So I recommend using wave.com. It's a free software where you can send invoices online. It just allows people to make quick and easy payments, especially if you're taking deposits. And it's just the way that like professional industries are moving forward. So if you were doing a commission for a bank and you asked them to Venmo you, like, no ma'am. So yeah, I mean, it's a thing. And then number 3, sending your clients regular updates. So I know with most commissions with artists, it's like there's a 2 or 3 month lead time sometimes. And so if it's crickets in between, what's the biggest nightmare is if you didn't take a deposit and you've got them in your commission queue, you didn't talk to them for the last month and a half. And then when you finally have a first look at their work, they maybe want something completely different from what you talked about with them in the first place. So keeping in touch with them just mitigates all of those like changes on the project throughout. We actually update our clients every Tuesday. So with art, I feel like that might be a little overkill, but with graphic design, I don't think so. If you have a project that's going to be turned around in a month or less, update your client every week. If it's a 2 to 3 month turnaround, I think every 2 weeks is enough. And then one thing that I think we also sometimes miss out on is just getting that last, promotional content out of a commission piece. So taking photos with the person who you did the commission for and their piece, and just documenting their story. So what their inspiration was behind the piece, what it means to them, that kind of stuff is gold content for your social media. So don't miss that piece of offloading your content. Yes, Miss Scarlett.
Can we talk a little bit, just back up a little bit, talk a little bit about why social media, including the ones that old people use, might be good for starting off a writing business?
Oh, yes. Okay, sure. So anybody over the age of probably like 28 to 30 is still using email and also still using Facebook. I hate to say it, y'all, but it's the thing. You have to still be posting, business related content, examples of your work to Facebook, to even LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I feel like, is more of a like news sort of outlet for your business. But if you've had a press release, if you have some pro tips for people who are your ideal clients, put those on LinkedIn. If you have stories of clients, that's great content for Facebook. And yes, email is still how most professionals conduct business. So if you are under the age of 30 and you have a spammy email that's filled with junk, create a professional email address, put it on your phone, create a habit of checking it. Even if you have to set a calendar reminder for every day, check your email. I just hate when my young creatives lose opportunities because they don't use the technology that somebody 10 years older than them is using. So yes, good question. And then I think posting client stories with their permission is a very important part of your marketing. And if you guys don't have a Facebook, an Instagram, or a website for your creative business, it's time to do that. For a while, you can get by just being your own, personal brand. But I think you're missing an opportunity to have people follow you that really do want to know what you're doing professionally, and want to see your work. Because in service-based, industries, it's not like, going and buying a new pair of shoes at Target. It's a longer, relationship. It's, somebody might want to follow you, see what you do, see what you're about for 6 months before they decide to work with you. So that kind of relationship is hard to build when they only are engaging with you personally online. So give them opportunities to engage with you professionally online by having a business account on social media. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Can I move into our frequently asked questions? Do we have questions online?
No questions online?
Okay, here's what we're gonna do now. I have an online poll. Y'all get your phones out. Go to Safari and go to sli.do. It's gonna ask you for a code. Tell me when you're there.
Okay, just so you know, we are having, I don't know why, the uploading handouts and such isn't very long webinar, so.
Well, hopefully they can take notes. I read the entire handout, don't worry. Can you pop the link in there for Slido? And okay, so everybody ready for the code?
No, can you?
sli.do. Okay, your code is 4260848.
So sli.do.
Mhm.
What was the code again?
426-0848.
$426-0848.
Correct. So I've got some of my frequently asked questions in there, Grace, and I brainstormed these ahead of time. I want you guys to pick like your top 3. And then hit send. I love watching it live up there. Did you do it?
Yes, but I don't want to answer because then I'm gonna skew yourself.
You can pick your top 3 FAQs. We have coworkers upstairs who watch football games apparently on Saturday mornings. I'm telling you, half of the people who work here are just trying to escape their family from.
That's hilarious.
I'm just kidding, kind of. I had one person tell me this place saved my marriage, like, because they were working from home during COVID, and they were just like, everybody's in their grill all the time, you know, just all the time trying
My
to.
husband works from home, and there's some truth to that.
Mhm.
There's some great work from home days. And there's
Yeah.
some times that, you
Yeah.
gotta have another place.
Everybody got the poll filled out? How we doing online?
There's no comments.
Okay. So I've got 12 people who have submitted. Oh, it's changing a little. 13. Okay. One of the top questions is, what should my hourly rate be? This is a good question, Grace. I'm going to let you take it.
Yes. So what should my hourly rate be? So usually when we start talking to clients about that, we want to start with like, what are your income goals? So you have to create a viable business, right? You have to create a business that either allows you to quit your day job if you still have a day job, or allows you to put food on your table. So we start with, if your income goal is $65,000 a year, then we divide that by 2080, and then you've got to figure out how to make that happen. Now, not every task that you do, right, is going to be at that dollar amount, but we want to make sure that we're trying to work towards what we say, practicing at the top of your license, or making it where every task that you have is close to that. So that's also how we help our clients decide when it's time to hire another person on your team, right? Is whenever you're able to, when like the tasks that you're doing aren't at the top of your license. But so if you want to, let's say you want to make $65,000 a year, then you've got to figure out with your cost, with your amount of pieces that you need to make. So let's say it takes you 6 hours to make this beautiful piece right here. And you know that you make X amount off of a piece of that size, and you want to make $65,000 in a year. We need to figure out how many pieces that you have to make to make that.
Let's do it for
Okay.
real.
Okay.
Okay. She charged $175 for that piece.
Okay.
So I feel like you probably spent $25 on supplies or more. No? Canvas, paint.
Canvas, because I always get them on sale.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So like, oh gosh, I don't remember. Like, I think the canvas might have been like $50.
Ooh, okay.
Because that's at level 3.
So we got $125 left, and
Okay.
she spent 6 hours on it. So she's making $20 an hour.
Okay. So will you multiply that by 2080?
Times 2080. What's that number?
That's how many working hours. If you work a 40-hour week, that's
Okay.
how many hours you're working in a year.
Okay, so your salary right now would be,
If you only sold those paintings
if
at
you
that
only
price.
sold these paintings, $43,000.
Yeah, $43,000.
How many of
a
these
year.
would she have to sell? How do we do that?
So if you
2080 divided by 6, because she's spending 6 hours on.
so no, yeah.
You have to sell 350 though.
In a year. So
One each day.
so I would say that our hourly rate on that painting is a little low, right? Because for us to sell 350 of those in a year, probably not gonna make the kind of income goals that you want to make overall. So I'd say you're probably underpricing. So hourly rate and kind of pricing your work, of course, goes hand in hand. So we want to, so that 2080 amount is like a 40-hour work week, which I get. Not all creatives are working 40 hours a week. You're working over, but what we want to do is like build in that work-life balance, right? Of we don't want to build in a 60-hour work week, because then we're having to work a 60-hour work week to make our income goals. So for example, for you guys, for designing, you can do something very similar with like a logo. Like, it's going to take you 6 hours to make a logo. That's about how long it takes you. The cost there isn't as high. So it's really, your time plus some administrative time working with the client, doing revisions, things like that. And so, you can come up with that kind of, I want to make $60,000 a year. I want to make $100,000 a year, however much. And then come up with a realistic number of those that you feel like you can sell in a year, and then kind of figure out what that hourly rate. Now, that doesn't mean that hourly rate is going to be reasonable, but that lets you know that, okay, this is a reasonable business. That's a reasonable income goal with my given business and what I'm selling right now. If it's unreasonable, then we need to figure out, okay, are there things that I do that have a higher profit margin that I need to focus on selling those versus selling these things that I'm going to have to sell 350 of them in order to make my income goals. And so that also helps you kind of slant your focus to maybe things that make a little bit more of a profit.
Yes. How do you know your income goal is reasonable?
So you're going to have to kind of come up. So these numbers will help you get there. So for example, if, so we just did that math at 600 or at $65,000 a year as an income goal, knowing that that's the price point we're selling that painting at, that's probably not a reasonable either income goal or a reasonable price for that painting.
Right.
I'm going to say we've underpriced that painting slightly.
Mm-hmm.
But so one of those two things has to be true, right? And so, and there's you're not only selling that painting at that size, but maybe we have a lot of interest in smaller paintings. They have lower cost. We can paint them a lot faster. Maybe there's more interest in them. Maybe we can sell 200 of those in a year. Okay, maybe we do paint a few of those per year, but we shift our focus to smaller paintings because that's where we have a high profit margin. We can make our income goals with that. Same thing with commissions. Commissions can take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort. And so, profit margins there, like they got to be priced a little bit higher. Your hourly rate on those probably needs to be a little bit higher because either your hourly rate needs to be higher. You need to just build in more hours for those. Or, maybe we don't focus on going after commissions. Maybe we focus on more pieces in galleries and things like that.
But to your point, Scarlett, like I think everyone's income goal is so different, and it's really based on what quality of life means to you. So like I think that's sort of it's an interesting question because I have young people ask me this all the time because we've got some kids graduating from university who are like assuming they're going to step into roles that make $45,000 to $55,000 a year, and they're disappointed when they don't, receive an entry-level salary that they were like sold maybe in some of their classes. And I always like to talk them through like, okay, where did that salary goal come from? And I think it just comes from people saying out loud what you could make if you were a graphic designer, what you could make if you were whatever.
I also know where else it comes from.
Okay.
The labor department puts out averages.
Yes.
When you're a young person and you look at that average, you think, hey, I'm going to step out with this degree and I'm going to at least
Step
make
into that.
this average because that's what most people are making.
Yeah. So what I do with most of my young people is I'll say, okay, well, let's talk about what kind of, house or apartment you want to live in. They've been dreaming about going and moving over to this apartment that their friend lives in. It's $850 a month. Okay. That's, one of your costs for the month. And then we create like a personal budget and we add up all of their bottom line expenses. And then I say, how many times a month do you want to travel out of town? And an out of town trip usually would average you maybe $1,000, $500 to $1,000. How many times a year do you want to travel out of state? It's all these like kind of lifestyle goals, I think, that contribute to how much you really want to be making in a year. And it's so relative,
The main thing with setting that hourly rate and setting the income goal is, so if you do kind of come up with that personal budget and you hit, $50,000 a year, and then you calculate how much you make on a specific painting or commission or project, and you're sitting at $25 an hour, you're either going to have to work over 40 hours a week to get to that income goal, or you have to increase that hourly rate. And so knowing that hourly rate and setting a reasonable hourly rate is important, especially when you're working through kind of the cost spreadsheet that Jessica came up with, because if you've undercut yourself on hours, even if you could sell 350 of those in a year, you're not going to reach that income goal because you've underpriced yourself. And so you could go out and sell you're going to have to sell 400 or 500 of those. Fantastic if you've got the market for that, but then you're going to be working over 40 hours a week. You're working 60 or 70 hours a week to keep up with the demand to then reach your income goal. And so knowing that hourly rate, keeping it reasonable, knowing, kind of what your income goal is just important to kind of keep those things, because you can do the math, and we're making up numbers here. I mean, we're making up, you're coming up with, your ideal, salary. We're coming up with how many paintings. It's all relative, but kind of keeping it all within the realm of reason, so that if you do get busy enough to sell all those paintings, you're at least making the money you want to be making doing this and making a viable business.
Yeah.
I got actually a couple of questions.
Great.
I want to go back, and I didn't catch where the 2080 comes from. And
Okay.
then I had another question.
Yeah, so 2080 in a full-time FTE, so full-time equivalent position, like in a corporation, you use 2080 as the number of working hours in a year. And so that's normally 40 hours a week with like 2 weeks of vacation time basically built in. So just 2080 is how many hours you're working in a year. And so if you take, whatever your income goal is in a year divided by 2080, that gives you a reasonable hourly rate to kind of charge for whatever you're doing to get you to that. So if you worked 40 hours a week on pieces that you could sell, then, or on, chargeable, client billable hours, then you would essentially reach that income goal minus your costs. So you have to keep that in mind too. So that's why when we go to price out on the pricing sheet, it's your hourly rate plus your costs plus admin time plus things like that.
And then so another question that's come up is the profit goals question. That's number 2, most popular. So, I mean, in any other business, I think the goal of a 10% profit margin is what most people are aiming for. But with a creative, job, how do you calculate that? At the end of the year, how much you sold things for. So you might have sold, $100,000 worth of art, but maybe you spent like 50,000 on supplies, and then you spend another 40,000 on your own salary. And so then you have 10,000 left. That's where that 10% profit margin should come from, because you really don't want to end the year with any business and not have any money left over. Like the goal is not to break even with your business.
Because then how do you go buy canvases on January 1?
Yeah. For the next, set of projects.
And that's something we see a lot with any business, is people will go out and sell, and then they're like, okay, I went and sold, and now that's all. But it's like, well, how are you going to go buy product for the next round of, so, or they're commingling their funds with their personal funds. So like buying art supplies on a personal credit card, or, taking cash and just, from a sale and just sticking it in your wallet. And it's like, oh, it all comes out in the wash. And it's like, you will hate yourself when it comes to tax time. Your accountant will hate you as well.
You just won't know if you're actually making a profit.
Yeah. And then you also won't be able, you're losing out on potential taxable or, untaxed revenue, because you're you don't know how much your expenses were and you don't have the receipts for it. So you can't prove that you keep those receipts, keep it separate, go out and create a separate account for your business. And then even if you're running a few $100s through it, just go ahead and do it. And then that way, when your business inevitably takes off, you're already set. You're good to go. You have your processes in place. You've kept your receipts. So that's my biggest, when people start talking about, starting a business and calculating profit, I'm like, keep that money separate. The easiest way to know what your profit is to keep it separate.
Did you have a second question?
I did. We talked you talked in the beginning about streams of income, not having too many. But my, I guess, question would be more on any hidden gems or ways of bringing streams of income for artists that you may have, or ideas you have.
Yeah.
Besides Etsy, of course.
Sure. Yeah. So for graphic design in particular, I think it's like any other service-based business where you know, most of the time you're going to be creating, you know, one thing for one person. And it's such a gamble when you go to try and sell like a stock graphic online because it's flooded. But if you are prolific and you can create, you know, a ton of stock graphics with very little time, then I'm all for that. Like go and put it online and try and sell it that way. But really what I would actually focus on is what Grace said and try to figure out which of your services is the most profitable. Like if you, yes, you can design brochures for people, but you really can't charge any more than like $150 for them. And you're spending way more than 10 hours on it or something, you know, something like that. If you're finding that you're spending too much time on certain projects and they're not profitable, just don't like hype those up as much. Don't push those, you know. That's how I would like.
Yeah, I think the challenge for me, my primary job is I teach graphic design and photography to high school. So
Okay.
because that takes so much time,
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of time, but
Right.
I lean my students toward like 99 designs because they have time to kill on it. But I'm looking
Yes.
for ways that I can make passive income.
Mhm.
But as far as like the Zazzle and
Yeah.
some of the other,
It's like kind of time suck just looking through all of the freelance work.
Is that like Upwork kind of thing?
Mhm,
What are the
Fiverr.
thoughts? What are the feelings on Upwork? Because I'm just curious.
Well, in America, you're competing with every other country. on
And they're
those
willing to do it
sites.
for,
And they will do it for $3 an hour because that's a great rate for them if they're outside of the US in a country that's, you know, maybe, you know, majority poverty. Like, so it is rough out there if you're competing with the whole world. So I have mixed feelings about that. Again, if you're really, really niche and you're like, all I do is heating and air conditioning logos, you could probably find a place on, you know, these online markets if you can get real niche about what you do and you're the expert in that. But building an online business to me is like a whole business of its own, you know? But I think the niche thing is really what either way is a good way for you to build quicker, because even though it sounds weird, it's like you're telling people how to talk about you. So if what is the type of stuff that you like to work on the most?
well, I find myself, just because it's what I do, I do more work for churches.
Okay.
Because I started doing work for my churches and then,
Yeah.
for my own church.
Mhm.
And then of course, word it's on.
Yeah.
So.
And so
it's like when you paint the dog,
right,
you know?
right. So do you like doing that?
It's cool, but I mean, I also do screen printing.
Mhm.
So I'm just kind of torn on which direction I want to go in. So
Yeah.
that's been my challenge.
Yeah.
Something that's kind of based on that.
Go
So
for it.
you're talking about reducing the number of revenue streams, but a lot of different workshops are talking about increasing those, especially after the pandemic. I know a lot of musicians who really only had one mainstream, and when the pandemic hit, they lost everything.
Right.
And so now they're diversifying into things like grants and doing presentations, and just in the off chance that that stream, one stream then goes away again.
For
because
sure.
They nearly lost everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of, I guess my question is where's the balance there? Because you guys are saying be niche and reduce the number of streams when everyone else is saying, hey, you need to have at least 3 or 4 maybe different ways of getting money in through your creative crafts.
I would not reduce down to one.
No,
That is absolutely
yeah.
not the intent.
Yeah.
I would say reduce into finding what is profitable for you, because what I see a lot of times is artists especially will have like multiple revenue streams and not really know which ones are profitable. And then sometimes you run the numbers and some of them aren't profitable at all. And so figuring out which ones are your most profitable and putting your time, energy, and effort into those that can make you kind of the biggest outcome. And then also building a business you love. So on top of that is, you know, leaning into like not painting the dog, painting the things that you enjoy painting that make you profit as well. So I think that there's definitely a balance there. But it's also, if you try to be too many things to too many people, your message gets lost. And then you end up being nothing to nobody because you can't find your audience.
So even if you said, I want to work with churches, I also see and hear that you are an instructor. So I might not say, okay, churches are your niche, only design church bulletins. I might say, hey, if church, if like nonprofit maybe is your niche, but it's a little bit broader, right? And you're like, I work with churches, I work with nonprofit, sector. And then maybe you even say, I teach, teams in house at a church. Like I'll come in for kids that are downloadable. So it's still, there are revenue streams there, workshops, downloadable, templates, and then, actual commissioned for hire, work for hire, graphic design work. So it's still, I think there's a lot of revenue streams there. It's just defining what you want to be known for, because there's just so many people out there doing, what we do. And so it's like, if somebody needs a graphic designer, I probably know 10 people to refer them to. But if somebody runs a nonprofit and needs a graphic designer who has the flexibility, to come in and also teach their team some things, I might say like, hey, she's a perfect fit, So does that make sense? Like even if you are a writer, and you write, let's say you want to write blogs, like that is what you're the best at. Maybe picking like a few industries who that like they, first of all, they have the money to pay for blogs. And you would actually enjoy writing their blogs like over and over and over again. But you could pick a few different industries, to do that with. And then, if you are open to education, I think that's a huge untapped like market for artists. Like I mean, even at the Conway Art Walk, we're always looking, we pay for an artist to come and do a demonstration at the art walk. And sometimes it's like, we're having to like get an artist excited about their demonstration because they're just not accustomed to like selling that service. So I'm, like, okay, you're going to be out there for 3 hours. You're going to be engaging with people. Like, here's what you're going to do, But if an artist came to me and they were like, hey, I got this whole experience in a box, like I'll bring it to your event. It costs you $800,000. Like events are looking for that kind of stuff. I mean, they want artists who can create an experience for them. So I think that's kind of an untapped revenue stream. But again, like it's still an opportunity to lead people back to the other things you do and the other things you're known for, Does that make sense? Okay, another question we had was about selling online. So prints are one thing that I think a lot of artists want to be able to sell online because it's easier to ship. Selling a big piece online, is shipping is a whole thing. And I mean, one of the biggest things to selling online is like, do you have a way for people to purchase online, period? Do you have a Square website? Do you have your items listed on Facebook, and then do you have an email list? Are you emailing people and letting them know when you're dropping new work?
Yeah, how are you driving them to it?
Do you have an online form that they can fill out if they're interested in commissions with you? I mean, there's some simple things that I think are like first steps to selling online. Second, I think, is driving people to your online store. Like if you build it, they will not come. Like that's not how it works in online sales, Yes.
Do you have any experience with Patreon? I know that's a real platform for visual artists. I know use it all the time.
Yeah.
But I think writers are starting to use it too.
Okay.
As an education tool. Like you sign up. There's different levels you can buy. It looks like a subscription. It deals on like how-tos or in instructional material, and also deals on like, here you can get this painting, for example, for this price instead of what it's actually worth.
Yeah, totally. I think honestly, there is like it's a whole business model of its own to do online education. And I mean, we have so many like online influencers right now who are on TikTok and YouTube making a living because they have focused all of their energy on doing that. So a lot of times if people, maybe if you are not necessarily the type that wants to go network in your local, town, and you'd actually rather create online content, I think you can take everything that you sort of want to be known for and put it online. And I mean, I know people here in Conway even who are doing like online education but they're not really going out and doing commission type work. You know, it's really like maybe their family and friends are hiring them for that, but they don't even have time. You know, if they're doing like an online education channel, like they don't have a lot of extra time to go in, because we're talking about recording and editing and then running like campaigns and marketing to your online stuff. But I think you have to pick something that you are diving like deep into, so that because then you'll be so spread out. Like if I was working, you know, 30 hours a week on paintings, and then for 10 hours a week, I was trying to build an online business, but I just couldn't, you know, invest enough time into it for it to actually take off. I think that would be discouraging, because then you feel like so spread thin.
And that's where like our point on like the streamlining your revenue streams, I think that's where that comes into play. It's like not spreading yourself so thin that you're a jack of all trades, a master of none, and you're not doing any of those things well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because it's especially with the Patreon, you have to build an online presence for that,
Yes.
which means you have to feed into the social media monster of like posting daily, you know, and posting.
Which is a whole job of itself.
Yeah, either on TikTok or Instagram Reels or something like that, you know, and it's like you can't really start a Patreon, you can't build it and they will come, you know, you kind of have to like build that online presence and then start the Patreon, and that, you know, you're feeding the monster there, and you can do it, but it's a full focus thing.
I can share.
Mhm.
Okay, so for me, it took at least a year for me to get all the pieces together. Like I have a website, I use Wix, and they have a lot of everything built in when it comes to invoices and email. Everything is already in the platform, even payments and all that stuff. So I've got the website, I've got my Facebook page and IG or Instagram. All of those feed into each other. You know, I've got it set up where if I post to Instagram, it's going straight to Facebook or vice versa. I try to make sure I do some more reels on Instagram and then do some other stuff on Facebook. My website, I've got Afterpay, I did that. I also have, I'm using Printful. So that's print on demand. So I don't even have to worry about it. If someone wants to print, they can just go to my little whatever shop that's on Printful and get it. And they handle shipping, they do all that stuff. I usually do, right now I'm doing like free shipping, just trying to see how this thing works or whatever. But those are the only platforms I can handle. It's like that because Facebook and Instagram work together anyway. So that was best for me. Just to get all those things.
And I can sit here and recommend to you that you like upload your work to Society 6 and, you know, do all these other things, you know, but like it's overwhelming. Every entrepreneur has a million outlets, and you have to choose which one, where's your audience, which ones are you going to invest your time in? Because I think it's easy for us to be like, well, I could be on Patreon, I should be on YouTube, and I should be on TikTok, and I should be on this. And so, I mean, I think that goes back to the work-life balance is like, which one's gonna get, you know, your message to your audience, invest your eggs in those baskets, you know, because we can get spread so thin if we try and be on everything all the time.
And that goes,
I'm sorry. I tried Etsy and was it Zazzle or whatever.
Yes.
And I was like, I just 2 more things. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So Etsy just sitting over there. So I'm just gonna like, okay, we're shutting that down. We're shutting this down and just stick to these 3 and be done.
I've seen this changed a lot anyway, because now they're no longer arts friendly.
Right.
I noticed that. And then people are stealing the artwork and putting it on Etsy. I'm seeing a lot of artists that I follow. And I'm like, that's their stuff being sold by somebody else. It's some dirty business going on.
I
hate that.
Okay, do we have any other questions online? I mean, I'll keep going on our little poll if we don't.
No, we don't.
I have one, the questions that's floating up is, why aren't I making a profit when I'm so busy?
You're undercharging.
Yes, charge more. Charge more.
Find your audience who will pay you more. One thing I did have about the pricing piece that I didn't mention earlier was being consistent on pricing.
Mhm.
That's something I see a lot of artists, like somebody, for some reason, the culture is like art is negotiable. Do you feel like as artists, like for some reason, like your services and your products are just like up for negotiation? And I think that sets a bad precedent for like people asking you to undervalue your work. And so one, I want to empower people to not feel like you have to undervalue your work and have like a prepared statement as to why you don't either reduce prices, like why your prices are set the way they are, you know your cost, you know your time, you know your worth, that kind of thing, and just kind of have a prepared statement. That way it doesn't get weird when people ask you for things, because it's also hard whenever somebody does value your work and pays you the full price, but then you've told like somebody over here that they can have it for 10% less because you want to make that sale. I think that that's an important piece that I see a lot of even our makers that we work with struggle with, is that, you want to make the sale, you want to get your art out there, you want to get your work out there, but also you want to keep that pricing consistent.
Cool. Okay. I think that's all we have in Scarlett. Do you want us to wrap up in a certain way? Is there anything else you want us to cover before we wrap up?
Well, I was talking to an artist yesterday, and she was talking about how one of the questions that come up most in her workshops was, how do I get my life together enough to do this? And I don't know if that's a good question or not, but I really identified with that. Like, I'm a hot mess too. I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so story time. I lost my job back in April. Okay, job I've been working for 6 years, full time, 40 hours. I'm a PR by trade. That's what I do. And just one day, it just happened. I didn't see it coming or anything. And I had been doing, some artwork here and there, whatever. And I wouldn't suggest anybody walk away from their job or anything. But now I am building everything around me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Instead of me building, trying to mold around this job, now I'm building everything around what I want.
Yeah.
I'm teaching, artwork, and also I work for a PR agency part-time. So it's not taking up. We came to an agreement. I work this many hours in a week.
Yeah.
Teaching is, this semester and that semester, and I got my summers, I'm building things around me. And I think that once we start getting to that point of thinking that's okay, you know what I'm saying, and not feel like you have to fit into this 8 to 5, you gotta be there, get out of that sometimes and say, you know what, I'm gonna build this like how I want it to look. So, and everybody can't do that, but God, and now my kids are grown, so I really can do it now.
Right.
It's like, good Lord.
Yeah.
I want to feel like I'm doing this. It's my life, and I'm controlling how things are looking instead of somebody telling me, where is it? What time is she? Has she been here? Where is she? How long does she go to lunch? I'm over it.
Yeah. So personal story, I run like a nonprofit and a small business, and it's a lot. And I do feel like my life is a hot mess sometimes too, most times. And I have felt like, I think a lot of, especially like women in entrepreneurship, are feeling overwhelmed and like spread so thin. So I was honestly this is really personal, but I love to be transparent about mental health. So I've been on like Prozac for anxiety for years, and had a conversation with somebody earlier this year about the way that they felt before they were diagnosed with ADHD. And they talked about how it just felt like they had people like just surrounding them, almost like putting sticky notes on them. Like, remember this, don't forget this. You should have done that yesterday. You forgot to do this, and you're just covered up in this like sticky notes of things to remember and to do and to, and this like, so I discovered through this journey of mental health that actually I have ADHD and have for years. So I'm like an adult, 33 years old, diagnosed with ADHD this year. And so I've started treating my ADHD, and it has changed my life in terms of feeling like I can actually focus on the fires that are the things that matter, and not the little fires that are coming up, all the time in life. And finish my priority list before I move on to the other little things that society's telling me are more important than my priority list. So this mental health, the whole journey of like going down that path for me has been the way for me to organize myself and my time. Because whenever we fill our time, it can result in just this overwhelm that like you can't, you almost feel like you can't defeat it, because it's still, even yesterday's overwhelm is still on your plate today. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's it's not really like I don't have a formula for you, but mental health care is my solution personally.
I think it's a real thing for, especially for artists in general. I know so many, I started off in elementary art, and so many of my art teacher friends are just like, okay, we started this, we started this, and we started this, and so many things go unfinished.
Yeah.
But then when you add other life on top of that, it's just like, I mean, I sympathize with you as far as like the sticky notes. But a lot of mine fall off and I forget stuff. And
Truly,
it's just like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So it's real.
Yeah.
But it just keeps swimming.
And I started singing now.
Right. I wrote that down really big what he says.
Yeah. No, I mean, boundaries, like it's a buzzword for a reason. Like somewhere we lost control of boundaries in life, and
I do have a question from online. Do you have to have a license in the state of Arkansas to sell art, or do you recommend a tax ID for artists? Meaning, like, I guess, what point do you go from just selling the art here to like actually going through a DBA or an incorporation?
Yeah. In order to have a separate bank account for your art business, you do have to have an EIN. So that is registering your business federally. And then in order to have a sales tax permit, so that's when you are able to buy your supplies and not pay tax on them, you'll need to be registered with the state. And you'll have to, purchase a sales tax permit. It's like $50.
I think you can get an EIN though, just from DBIA. Like, you don't have to go through like upper levels. You might need to later, but to start out, you can just do a DBA and get that EIN number.
Yep.
You have to register with the state, and then you can apply for an EIN.
Yep.
But you have to have a separate business entity, so you can't run it through your personal.
Right.
You have to like register a separate entity, and then you can apply for your EIN. So that's all the bank will need for you to do it. And the process can be egregious and be a little scary. The cost associated with it is not too crazy to go register your business or to get your sales, like all of that it's pretty cost friendly. The process can be a little crazy, but I know, like, I don't know if you guys help people do that. We help people do that.
No, conductor, do that with the conductor.
Yeah, we can talk you through that whole process of how to do that.
All their services are free.
Yes, yes. I should have said that at the beginning. I always forget that fun fact about us, but yeah, everything that we do is at no cost. So
and is your info on the bottom of the sheet?
It is not at the bottom of the sheet. You can go to arconductor.org. I forgot my rack cards in my, but go to arconductor.org, arconductor.org, and hit Let's Talk and make an appointment with anybody on our team directly through Calendly. So super easy. You can go see our availability, and we're happy to sit down with you and talk about what is an LLC versus a sole proprietorship. Which one do you need? How do you get your EIN set up? How do you, is it local, state, federal, all that kind of crazy stuff.
What are some like clues though? So I can have a follow-up question, like, do we need an LLC? So I think people are interested in that, but there seems to be a tipping point between you're just producing and getting off the ground to you're getting a corporation. Are there some signs that people should look for? Like, how do they know when it's time to move forward with a business?
So anytime you're selling a product, you are paying taxes on that income and should be running it through a separate entity. You can run it through a sole proprietorship, which is the alternative to an LLC, but you need to be legally, you have to kind of say that you have sold that product and then pay taxes on said income outside. So you're either going to do that through a sole proprietorship or an LLC. You can do it through a sole proprietorship up to a certain point. So you can absolutely start as a sole proprietorship and you don't have to have an LLC. To me, LLCs are pretty inexpensive to get started. I think it's like under $100, maybe under $200 to get it started with the state. You can go ahead and claim your name as an LLC and it separates your business liability from you as a person. The other benefit to LLCs, when you saw like the PPP loans and EIDL loans and things come out over COVID, sole proprietors were not eligible for that funding. LLCs were, and that was just, they had to create a line in the sand between the two. And I get why they did it. But literally you had individuals who had been practicing under a sole proprietorship in the same type of business as people that had just spent $120 to set up an LLC. One was getting PPP funding, one wasn't. And that was hard to watch.
Yeah.
And so now after seeing people go through that, I really recommend just go ahead and set up that LLC, separate your business liability from you. If you ever decide to take on capital for any reason, they can't go after your house. They can only go after your profession or your business property. God forbid that happened, but that's kind of the separating lines. And so I truly recommend go an LLC from the very beginning, and then you can go apply for that EIN number and then get your business set up with a bank account and all of that. It's just really not. And then I think the renewal fee every year is $60 maybe. I should have these numbers memorized after I've many people, but it's not crazy. It's not crazy, and it's just worth it.
I always tell people the $600 rule because that's the 1099 rule. You know,
Yeah.
if an entity were paying you over $600 a year, they would need to issue a 1099 to you. So to me, that's like an easy, like if you're selling more than $600 worth of art per year,
Yes.
go ahead and create your LLC, like your business according to the federal government.
Yeah, or if you think you're going to sell over $600, go ahead and get that process started because you've got to, and that's why it's like, it's not that much cost to go ahead and do it. And so it's like, you don't want to wait until you've sold 601.
And then you're
To
trying to
start that.
separate everything in the past. And it's
Yes,
confusing.
like it's like if you think there's a chance you're going to sell $600 worth of product, like just go ahead and get it set up. If you're really getting serious about this and you're going to go out and promote it, like $5.99 is not the time to do it.
Yeah.
So I got my LLC. It's like I set up everything just in case. Because I didn't know where this was going to go, but I didn't want to get too far and oh my God, I don't have an LLC.
Yeah.
Now you were talking about something about
Sales tax permit. Yeah, you shouldn't have to pay taxes on your art supplies and the things that you buy.
Because you're using products.
resell.
Yeah.
But that also means that you should be charging tax on the things that you do sell.
Okay.
So that's a whole thing. Go meet with Grace and she will walk you through that.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. It's a great way to just summarize the whole process. But yeah, so because you're selling that product with tax, you should not pay taxes on the things that you're using to make that product. So like, for example, if you are a bakery and you make a cupcake, you don't pay tax on the flour used to make the cupcake. You pay taxes on the selling of the cupcake, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
The customer covers the tax.
yes. So that is not, you're not paying for taxes for each piece, and then you just pay tax at the end of the year on your product, on your profit for whatever your business sells overall. So it's a way to keep you from like paying tax multiple times. So anyway, they pass that on to the consumer, lucky consumers.
So there's a sales tax exemption when you go to particular businesses, right?
It kind of operates like a sales tax. If you've worked like a not-for-profit that has that, it kind of operates in that way where you don't pay sales tax on that. Those products, yes.
That doesn't apply to graphic design services and a lot of creative services. You do not have to charge sales tax on because it's not a tangible item. So that's sort of
and that's where artists get the worst of both worlds, and that they're a product and a service-based business combined, and things just like the world's not made for that. The world's made for either product or services. Either way. So
if you have online invoicing, it's really easy to just
yes.
add the tag.
If you build those processes in place, and that's why when the question about like, how do I get my life together to do this? Like, build those processes in place, and it won't make it foolproof, but if you can build some processes, utilize technology to kind of make this as easy on you as possible, you won't feel as much as a hot mess as you would without that stuff. Just like make it easier on you, make it easier on your clients, build out a lean canvas.
Yeah.
Get your stuff in order.
Yeah.
Come meet with us.
Yes.
We'll be a hot mess together.
Sort it out.
Yeah.
No bins.
Well, are there any questions? Oh, wait.
Okay.
Well, is there anything we should have asked that we didn't?
I'd love to go ahead and share what the next Arkansas Arts Council event will be.
Only if you will also start with the, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about your
TikTok for Business.
Creative Institute
Oh, yeah.
GAP program for
Yeah.
younger people.
So fun times. We actually just lifted the age limit on our program. So,
So what's the age limit now?
there is no age limit.
Okay.
18 plus. So at the Creative Institute, we have a 1-year program for students who are interested in pursuing creative jobs. So this is anybody who's even just dabbled in photography and wants to go full-time with photography business, or they've maybe dabbled with graphic design and they want to be hired on to a team as a graphic designer, but they don't have a portfolio. So they come to us for a year and study graphic design, copywriting, photography, and videography, as well as just some other amazing classes like networking and building your portfolio, all kinds of things. And at the end of the year, all of our students have worked with over 20 clients, have a full portfolio that's hosted online, have their own domain name to lead to it and everything. They're equipped with business cards, a network of probably 30 or 40 new professional contacts. And then our goal is by the end of the program to have matched them with an employment opportunity or help them launch their freelance business or take it to the next level. So it's called the Emerging Talent Program, and our website is creativeinstitutear.org. It's $8,000 per year. We have scholarships available to students with Black and Latino heritage, students who have financial need, and then we have a payment plan so that people can pay it out throughout the year. But our goal is that every student graduates debt-free. So we don't do loans for that reason. Yeah. And next year we'll have housing next fall.
Really?
Well, our students will live at the J-Lofts.
I love it. It's a fantastic program. In addition to all the things you mentioned, they just curate really awesome experiences for the students. Like, I mean, every time I see the Creative Institute students are doing something awesome, and I'm like, what an opportunity at that age to like get to see. I mean, like when you're over at Conway Art watching like Channel 5 record, I'm like, what an opportunity, like a behind the scenes.
Oh, we don't sit in the classroom. You're everywhere going and doing and experiencing. You're in, creative agencies, seeing what they do. Yes, Ms. Crum.
Can you, as a student, be in college or doing something else and this, or is it like?
Yeah, so we've had some students who want to do this in college, and I think that's a lot because we have a pretty big workload for students. Like they are doing a lot of project work at once. But all of our students thus far have had a job, in the morning. So we schedule all of our classes from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. so that our students can work a morning shift or weekend shifts or night shifts. So, yeah.
So they don't have to, they can have just graduated and then roll over into the program.
They have to have graduated high school or have a GED. Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Thanks for letting me plug that. And Conway Art Walk, the next one is December 2nd. So I'd love to see everybody there. And if you want to get involved, honestly, our volunteers have had the best experience networking. So even if you're like, I don't have enough inventory to sell at Art Walk, I just want to get to know people who care about this kind of thing. Volunteering is a great way to build your network.
It's a great place to buy very unique Christmas gifts, which I've already bought a couple.
Our theme for December is pop and color, and we'll have a holiday market, and we have a local fashion designer doing a fashion show at UCA downtown. It's gonna be a whole thing.
I can't wait.
I know. So next thing at the Arts Council is what?
We have a bunch of GetSmART programs coming up in early December.
Okay, lots of December workshops. Creative Institute has a TikTok for business workshop. So if any of you guys want to be on TikTok, it's $75 and you can come and learn from a YouTuber from Dallas who does a lot of influencer type marketing content. And he'll have you, I know, it's gonna be so fun. You should come. He'll help you create a TikTok before you leave. Like you will have a TikTok before you
Do you
leave.
have to dance?
No.
Okay.
Girl,
Well, somebody
no.
has to dance.
His biggest thing is how to hook people in the first few seconds.
Ooh.
And so that's really, to me, the most valuable thing is learning that, learning how to hook
So don't
somebody in
keep
the first few
scrolling.
seconds. Yeah,
Same in writing.
totally. Yes, same writing. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. I'd love to continue connecting with all of you guys after this, and I'll wrap it up. Thanks everybody online.
Thanks, everybody. Oh, wait. What are the names again, please? Oh, would you mind last minute introducing yourselves?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Grace Rains with the Conductor. You can go to arconductor.org.
Jessica Crum with Creative Institute and Silverlake. So creativeinstitutear.org, and my branding agency is silverlakestudio.com.
Would you be willing to do it? How do you talk with high schoolers about what you do?
Girl, yes. I have a whole PowerPoint on creative jobs.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I've been really like astounded because students that I've spoken to, probably in a classroom of like 20 to 25, when I ask how many of you guys know somebody who has a creative job, and I just list out, I mean, interior design, every creative job I can think of, and maybe 2 students will raise their hand in the class that even know somebody with a creative job. Yeah, I feel so immersed in the culture and in that world, but I'm finding like the more I go and speak to students, the more like exposure is still a problem for creative work. Yeah, and we have probably 3 people on every single week calling us and asking us for referrals from our, and I only have 3 alumni right now. So this year, now after this cohort, I'll have 6 alumni. And then next year we're enrolling up to 12 students. So we're kind of beefing up our alumni network. But right now I'm like sending job references to the same like 6 people.
They're like, just that we have jobs.
I know.
We're good. You know, like we're good.
But people are hiring. They're hiring marketing assistants, or like, I mean, everybody needs somebody to do their marketing right now. You know, like they're all looking for somebody to help with social media and email. And that's one of the things that we're equipping our students to do. All of our students graduate with a certification in Meta, Google, MailChimp.
And they just get exposed to
Adobe.
so much. I mean, like, I just cannot imagine, like, it's like, yes, they're the ideal marketing assistant, because it's like they have been exposed to all these mediums and like have such a wonderful business like network too. I mean, because like they go to like networking events and things like that. Like I know Leo makes them go to so many. I mean, one of the instructors, Leo, like not makes them, but he encourages, like he's like teaching them communication skills and like, okay, go out,
Go
and, like,
introduce yourself
yes,
to 4 people.
yeah, go communicate and meet people, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm like,
good.
what a great, I mean, what a great program.
It's fun. It's like a trade school for creatives.
Mhm.
So we're having fun.
And they all look like they're having fun.
Yeah.
They did have to one time. I know that they were utilized to move some chairs at the AIC during Art Walk. They're volunteers there, so I mean they do put them to work as well. It's not all fun and games.
No. And we all have to do copywriting. So copywriting is sometimes, if that's not their favorite thing to do, sometimes that one's hard. But
That's
you
true.
have to know how to do it. If you want to do any sort of, communication, you have to know how to write.
Yeah. But
anyway,
awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Make some snacks on your way out, please. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.